This is Standing Watch. And now, Evangelist Norbert Link.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to our Standing Watch program. Now, we have been warning you for quite some time that civil unrest, if not civil war, can break out in the United States, in Great Britain, in other parts of the world, and events can lead to this conclusion in a more drastic way than many people might realize, because the conditions are such that there are definitely quite a number of scenarios leading towards that kind of a situation. I'd like to just discuss with you a few today. The first one, of course, has to do with the recent US election, which has been viewed by many as being rigged and filled with fraud, which has already caused to violence. Now, the Fox News article of November 14 has this to say. President Trump lashed out against Antifa scum and the media Saturday night as violence continued in Washington, D.C., where pro-Trump supporters gathered for the Million MAGA March. In a series of Twitter messages, the president also blasted counter-protesters as human radical left garbage. Trump accused Antifa activists of returning under cover of darkness to cause mayhem. Trump also accused the silent media of ignoring the Washington clashes, retweeting a message about a total media blackout as leftists launched abhorrent assaults against Trump supporters. Earlier Saturday, the march was largely peaceful, but as the sun went down, snippets of scenes shared on Twitter showed chaos had overtaken areas in the nation's capital. Now, that is just the beginning. Much worse scenarios will be witnessed soon. The U.S. Sun, in other words, the Sun, which is a paper in Britain, has a U.S. edition, and they wrote on November 20. Hundreds of far-right groups have sprung up across the United States and are ramping up recruitment in the fallout from the highly charged election and the coronavirus pandemic. Online forum My Militia, which promotes itself as an American Patriot network, has more than 20,000 users and has seen a flurry of activity in recent weeks. The network claims there are 544 militias currently active in the United States, carries instructions on how to make explosives and improvised weapons, and lists of names of members of Antifa. Many of the self-appointed militiamen say they are preparing to ride out mass civil unrest, while others more dramatically predict an upcoming civil war. It comes, the article goes on to say, after a string of violence over the summer, with Donald Trump blaming extreme left-wing groups for stoking mayhem. The potential of clashing with extreme left-wing groups could turn the United States into a powder-keg. Antifa is an umbrella term for far-left militant groups. Trump has blamed Democrats for enabling the movement, and Barr, Attorney General Barr, has said police in every city where there has been protests identified Antifa as responsible for the violence. Violence, let me repeat, in the United States over the outcome of the election and regarding other matters, such as coronavirus restrictions, about which I will talk in a moment, that's inevitable. It is inevitable. But there is more. Could there be violence, perhaps even civil war, because of racism? But this time in a different way than the first Civil War occurred. Daily Mail wrote on November 18, Journalist Megyn Kelly will put her kids from the far left New York City school where a letter was sent around to faculty that claimed white school districts across the country are full of future killer cops. She said the letter asserted that white children are inherently racist, that there is a killer cop sitting in every school where white children learn, and that white school districts across the country are full of future killer cops. Now, Kelly said the schools have always been far left, but they have now gone around the bend. I mean, they have gone off the deep end. Now, how long do you think these kind of allegations, accusations, completely, totally unfounded accusations, I might add, will be tolerated? Or do you think there's going to be a backlash pretty soon? What about civil war because of coronavirus restrictions? Now, let me just say that we in no way are advocating violence. Violence is wrong. But what we are doing is reporting about the situation. And the next article, which was published in an English paper, The Conversation, on November 13, is eye-opening. I believe extremely interesting to read. Let me just read excerpts from it to you. It says, it seems like that 2020's Christmas festivities will be much more intimate affairs, potentially with households banned from mixing indoors. But what if families ignore distancing rules, should they remain in place, and celebrate together rather than on Zoom? Politicians seeking to come hard on rule breakers might wish to recall a previously restricted Yuletide. Back in 1647, Christmas was banned in the Kingdom of England, which at that time included Wales, Scotland, and Ireland, and it didn't work out very well. Following a total ban on everything festive, from decorations to gatherings, rebellions broke out across the country. By a decree of Parliament, the usual festivities during the 12 days of Christmas, from December 25 to January 5, were deemed unacceptable. Shops had to stay open throughout Christmastide, including Christmas Day. Displays of Christmas decorations were banned. Other traditions such as feasting and the celebratory consumption of alcohol, consumed in large quantities then as now, were likewise restricted. Christmas Day, however, didn't pass quietly. People across England, Scotland, and Ireland flouted the rules. In Norwich, the mayor ignored illegal celebrations across the city. In Canterbury, the usual Christmas football game was played. Over the 12 days of Christmas, the partying spread across all of Kent, and armed force had to be used to break up the fun. Christmas Day was celebrated in the very heart of Westminster, and the church wardens of St. Margaret's Church, which is part of Westminster Abbey, were arrested for failing to stop the party. Young men armed with spiked clubs patrolled the streets, persuading the shopkeepers to stay shut. Taking up arms and breaking the rules were not just about experiencing the fun of the season. Fighting against the prohibition of Christmas was a political act. Things had changed, and the Christmas rebellion was as much a protest against the new normal as it was against the banning of fun. People were fed up with a range of restrictions and financial difficulties. Do you see the parallels? The article goes on to report. The aftermath of the Norwich Christmas riots was the most dramatic. The mayor was summoned to London in April of 1648 to explain his failure to prohibit the Christmas parties. But a crowd closed the city gates to prevent him from being taken away. Armed forces were again deployed, and the ensuing riots, and during the ensuing riots, the City Ammunition magazine exploded, killing at least 40 people. In Kent, the county went into rebellion against Parliament. Royalists began organizing the rioters. Successively, in 1647 and 1648, parties led to riots. These riots led to rebellions, which in turn caused the Second Civil War that summer. King Charles was put on trial after his defeat in the war and was executed. This resulted in a revolution, and Britain and Ireland became a republic, all because of Christmas. This Christmas, police across the country are ready to enforce COVID regulations and break up gatherings. Politicians could learn from the fallout of the last time Christmas was cancelled. Like in 1647, many people today are fed up with the government's restrictions. Many have also suffered financial difficulties as a result of the COVID regulations. There has already been civil disorder over lockdowns. The last thing the country needs is further unrest. As this is talking about the United Kingdom, I would say it equally applies to the United States as well as other quote-unquote Christian nations. Now, let me just be plain. God doesn't want his people to celebrate Christmas being a thoroughly pagan day, but that's not the point here. The point is, do you see the parallels? Now, governments are very well aware of the danger. And so the UK and the proverbial political chameleon Boris Johnson have just announced that from December 23 to December 27, the COVID rules will be somewhat relaxed. And now up to 3 families can meet indoors. And Germany is also very well aware of the danger. And they have just declared, or are about to declare, a so-called limited amnesty for the Christmas season. And so now more than 2 households can meet with a maximum of 10 adults. But then afterwards, people are encouraged to self-isolate. Now, let me just ask you, what is going to happen after people have breathed a little bit of liberty and freedom during the Christmas time, and then they're being told, okay, now we'll go back to the lockdowns? How nicely, how friendly will they react to such a policy? On January 27, 1838, Abraham Lincoln said in Springfield, Illinois, "At what point then is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of freemen, we must live through all time or die by suicide." Are we in the United States, in Great Britain, in other countries, are we committing national suicide? The title of this program is, Are You Really Prepared for Civil War? And I'm not only talking about spiritual preparedness. I'm also talking about physical preparedness. Now, of course, you need to have a close relationship with God, so that in case of turmoil, in case of violence, in case of civil unrest, in case of civil war, you have his protection. But there are also things you can do from a physical standpoint. For instance, do you have enough food and drink in your home? Do you have enough cash in your home? Let's assume banks close and your credit cards are of no value because the whole postal system breaks down, and even if you order something over the internet, you cannot receive it. I mean, these are just common sense questions you should ask yourselves, because, my friends, it looks to me that civil unrest, if not civil war, is coming to this country. And that would be also something which would be prophesied. We have prepared a free booklet, The Fall and Rise of Britain and America. It's talking about the downfall of the United States. From the inside, but then also from the outside. You need to read this booklet. And I thank you for your attention. And until next time, this is Norbert Link for the Standing Watch program.
Standing Watch is a presentation by The Church of the Eternal God, P.O. Box 270519, San Diego, California 92198. More information is also available at our website, eternalgod.org.